It's been brought to my attention that collecting and reading books isn't considered a particularly manly hobby. To which I say, yeah, fair. Honestly, I was just thinking about the whole discourse going around to why so many young men are having a hard time finding their way nowadays and wanted to ship in. I get it. They keep telling you to move aside, that you are somehow guilty of things that happened before you were even alive, that there's something inherently wrong with you. I could sit here and suggest you read a couple of Ian Fleming here, some Ernest Hemingway there, but come on, how would that even help? It would raise your spirits, but I'm looking for something a bit different. Do have a look at The Old Man and the Sea, if you have the time. Take it as an honorary mention. Speaking of Hemingway, I went out of my way to get myself some maraschino liqueur and some rum. I wanted to try the Papa Doble. Apparently, Hemingway would drink this quite often during his stay in Cuba. It's a daiquiri with no syrup and double the rum. It's strong. Yeah, this is vile. It's just a worse rum, right? Like, wonderful writer, taste in liquor. I'ma go ahead and make myself some Earl Grey to wash away the Hemingway. Here are the top 10 manliest books ever. Oh my god. Number 10 is Lonesome Dove by Laurie McCurtry. I feel like the Western as a genre is a bit overlooked nowadays. I get that it had been constructed and deconstructed a million times by the time Jimmy Carter was in office. But there's still some ground to cover, some juice to squeeze, if you will. This is about old cowboys doing cowboy shit. They cattle drive, there's horse talk, bean talk, friendship, hoes, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, I mean sex workers. There's also... alright, so are you familiar with the Lone Ranger? No, not that one. That one was of its time and is a beloved classic. I mean the really cursed one with Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp. You see, I have a theory about racism. No, not like that. I believe that it can be funny. Listen, racism can be funny, but only if you really lean into it. Think Blazing Saddles or Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder, you know? But also, you have to get it, right? You have to have substance behind it, or else you're just being a dick. You don't wanna be Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's is what I'm trying to say. Basically, similar to Johnny Depp and Lone Ranger, the stereotypical depiction of Native Americans in Lonesome Dove is not malicious, not intentionally. It's a good book, a modern classic of the genre. Number 9 is Endurance by Alfred Lansing. This is my one non-fiction entry of the list. There is no need for bells and or whistles, no melodrama or spectacle. Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition was hellish. Eating penguins, gangrene, using snow as toilet paper, that one guy who went crazy because of the wind somehow. But I hear you ask, why would anybody want to go to the South Pole if it's so goddamn horrible? Ma'am, there are dreams that men have that women cannot understand. Also, Shackleton was, if we are being generous at that, ill-prepared for the expedition. We know this now, but it's very easy to judge things in hindsight. Number 8 is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I do honestly believe that grim-dark fantasy is the manliest subgenre. Don't believe me? Let's try an experiment then. Next time you have the opportunity, go ahead and go to your local miniature store. You know, where they play Warhammer, and count the number of women that you can see. I'm not saying that only men like this kind of graphic violence and dark themes, but there's something about them that the boys tend to appreciate more. This is still very much high fantasy though, so as you can expect, a lot of the space within the novel goes into world building. Unexpectedly, however, there's still plenty of focus on action and characterization, even more so with this being the first of a trilogy. It might just be my favorite first part of a fantasy trilogy, and no, I'm not just out here hating on Tolkien. Again, this is very much a standing on the shoulders of giants situation. Although at this point, Joe Abercrombie has inspired plenty a young author himself. Number 7 is Rules for a Night by Ethan Hawke. Yes, that Ethan Hawke, so listen. I'm not normally one to sit down and read a self-help book written by some Hollywood asshole, but this is actually pretty good. It's written as if it was a bunch of letters from a knight called Sir Thomas Lemuel Hawke, and Ethan Hawke is just his descendant, who has translated the letters from the original Cornish. Basically, you get a bunch of advice disguised as fables and parables. The pretense is that the dude who wrote them was trying to leave some wisdom behind for his children in case he died on the battlefield, which he did. If you have kids, this is a good one to read together. For real, it's got a good moral lessons, it's not too preachy, and it's got a cool aesthetic. Do you guys think he read this to Maya Hawke growing up? Oh yes, Maya Hawke, the manliest dude I know. Number 6 is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. One thing that I knew from the moment I set out to curate the books for this list was that there was going to be at least one Cormac McCarthy book in it. The Road is a story about a father and a son, it's a story about sacrifice and love, it's a story about survival. I believe that the essence of a man, distilled to its purest form, retains the qualities that make us divine. The willingness to sacrifice in order to protect others. This is in our nature. From the moment we were able to stand on 2 feet, spears in hand, conscience manifested. We learned that darkness comes after the sun sets, and that no matter how bright a flame, it cannot defeat the void alone. So what the first men did, as an act of love, they carried that flame until the next generation was strong enough to do the same, and then they passed it on. That is how we defeated the night. Number 5 is No Beast So Fierce by Edward Bunker. Are you familiar with the film Reservoir Dogs? I think it may have taken a bit from this book. It's thematically similar too. It's about Max Dambo. After he spent 8 years in prison, Dambo is now out on parole. But the story is not about crime, not really. It's about what being deprived of freedom does to a man. It takes us in a tour through the Los Angeles underworld, shows us the ugly things beneath the surface. But the reason why I mentioned Reservoir Dogs in the first place comes down to the fact that this is technically the second book written by an actor in this list. Edward Bunker was Mr. Blue in Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. The thing about Edward Bunker's books, this one in particular, is that the way he conveys the rage and frustration, it's that unapologetic, edgy style that feels genuine. That's because before he was an actor and a writer, Edward Bunker was a criminal. Nothing too serious, but he did spend some time in jail, so he knows what he's talking about. Basically, I'm saying that being a man is tough, and this is a tough book. Makes sense, right? Number 4 is Magister Dummy by Herman Hesse. The whole buildings roman genre is in essence very manly. since it explores a character's development from a boy all the way till he's a macho, full mustachioed man. In this one we follow one Joseph Connect in a society where the most important thing in the world is this one overcomplicated game. He goes to a special school to play and learn about the game. I think he's good at it. It's complicated. The rules to the actual game are really never explained, but we can infer it's similar to chess or Go. So yeah, the whole goal here isn't really to teach you how to play some game, it's about Joseph Connect and how he becomes a great man through mastery of the game. Because you see, the game is a metaphor for knowledge, culture, spirituality, and conviction. Mastery of the game means an impassionate understanding, because once you start thinking about the game, you have lost the game. Haha, got him. Number 3 is Slaughterhouse V by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. War! What is it good for? People have one of two stances about this one. They either absolutely love it or hate it, which is something I wouldn't admit publicly if I did because of the implication. But yes, the prose is at its best serviceable. It's simple and understandable for whatever that's worth, but still quite graphic, which makes sense. It deals with the fire bombings of Dresden, but still manages to keep some levity, which is an accomplishment by itself. This is not a book about heroics and the exaltation of war. It's about war as a human experience, particularly through the eyes of a man disillusioned by it. It's war as a game with no winners, a reflection on a man's purpose and the value of life. So it goes. Number 2 is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. I believe that maybe that old Spanish guy who used to vandalize windmills south of the Toledo Mountains had a point. Books about chivalry are great and manly as hell. Plus, they teach us about virtue and purpose. The first part of this book is all about that actually. It's about a young King Arthur being taught lessons by Merlin the Wizard, his upbringing with Sir Ector, his rivalry and friendship with Sir Kai. It's quite an enjoyable opening course. Then stuff gets complicated because that's how the world is. We go through Arthur's early adventures as he faces the Queen of the Orkneys for the first time. We witness the formation of the Knights of the Round Table, and eventually the perspective shifts so that we are able to see through the eyes of Sir Lancelot during his courtship of Lady Guinevere, really encompassing many facets of what being a man is. Number 1 is Too Loud a Solitude by Bohumil Hrabal. So, if you've never heard about Bohumil Hrabal, he's a Moravian writer that was fairly active during the post-war period. Hard times make great men and whatnot. This isn't even my favorite book of his. I'm more of a dance lessons for the advanced of age kind of girl. Too Loud a Solitude is about an old man who works at a paper crusher in Soviet Prague. He uses his position to save banned books from being destroyed. Ironically, this book was banned by the regime, but I digress. Too Loud a Solitude deals with themes like the nature of violence, technology, our place in the world as society changes, and the everlasting power of ideas and stories. I feel like it really resonates with masculine struggles nowadays. With that, I do hope you have a wonderful day. Write down in the comments if you know some more manly books that I didn't mention. Like, share and subscribe for more lists. I'll see you next time.